room for criticism of how the dinner is and the weekend and the nerd prom? Of course, but who cares about that? That doesn't matter to American people. Is there room for criticism of the comedian? Absolutely. Why? Because she was not there to spread warm and fuzzy.
No.
So there will be people who say she was too mean to Sarah Sanders. It was too much. And that's fine. But here's the larger point. For people to say I'm outraged at that because I'm a conservative and you guys were offensive to me about my feelings of abortion, it was mean, and I didn't like it, but not have the same reactions to things that the President of the United States says on a regular basis. He literally just said at that rally in Michigan, they hate you, the media, they hate you. Those are conservative principles, too. They always were. How people treat their families, how they treat the people in their romantic lives, how they act, and what kind of language they use. These were bedrock conservative issues. They are being ignored now because the president lines up with their political interests.
This is all situational ethics, and it's absurd to hold a comedian to a higher standard than the President of the United States, but we see that all the time. Look, I think when people get too offended by comedians, they're really directing their anger in the wrong place. But I do think that one thing's notable. On a number of occasions when Sarah Huckabee Sanders has been confronted by journalists angry or offended by something the president has said, she has recommended get a sense of humor. Try it out sometime. That certainly applies here. If feelings are hurt, I feel terribly. But if it's being used to sort of, play the victim to get, an edge on the outrage meter of the day, that doesn't actually serve anybody. And so let's be real about what's offensive, what's not, and how to judge a comedian versus the President of the United States.
But, I mean, Nia Malika, obviously, if this is a teachable moment, the journalists didn't play this one, right? Because if their real goal was unity, solidarity, showing that they don't want a battle royale with the president may want that with the media, this one missed the mark of those goals. And so now, here we are, and maybe it is, as you say, going to be fodder for the president's war with the media, and that's, okay, we accept that, but I don't know that it's helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem with this new iteration of the White House Correspondents' Dinner is that the president hasn't decided to go, right? So typically when you have the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the president is there. The president is making fun of everyone. He's making fun of himself. He's making fun of his administration. He's making fun of Democrats and Republicans. And so in the absence of that, there is this outsized focus on the comedian there. So it turns into a different kind of event. And that's why we're talking about it now. We probably would have been talking about President Trump if he had been there and the sort of jokes that he would have made, and who knows, he might have poked fun at Sarah Sanders and other folks in his administration. So I do think they probably have to rethink it a little bit because if the president doesn't go, then you're going to have this focus on whoever the comedian is or whoever the act is or whoever. But listen, this is also what happens every single year with the White House Correspondents' Dinner. There's always this sort of rethinking. Is it too celebrity focused? When Larry Wilmore did it, when he called the president the N-word, oh, should he have done that? And so there's always this kind of a pearl clutching around this event, which is just, I mean, it's just silly. It's a joke. It's a comedic act, and they have to decide whether or not that's the way they want to conduct this dinner. Right. I didn't go to the dinner. I don't really like usually going to the dinner because you're like packed in there eating a terrible dinner usually late at night. No offense to the folks who cook that dinner.
Why would they be offended?
But, right. But, yeah,
be careful at the Washington Hilton.
Yeah, they're going to come after me on Twitter, I'm sure.
But look, you make a good point. When it's the President of the United States and a comedian, there's a high low. The thing balances itself out. And presidents use self-deprecating humor. When President Trump does that, as he rarely does, it's actually very effective. But that in self sort of feeds into the outrage Olympics. And it's worth folks remembering that before President Trump, the last president not to attend the Correspondents' Dinner was Ronald Reagan when he was recovering from being shot. So, that itself is part of how we end up in this echo chamber.
Well, look, and let's see how it played out, right? I mean, so the White House Correspondents' Dinner is going on. President's in Michigan giving a rally. He says to the audience, they hate you, the media. They hate you, okay? Now, did that dinner give him an opportunity to say that? Yep. Gave him some ammo, no question about that. But you don't hear any outrage from people who are conservative about, wow, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't say that the media hates them. You shouldn't say that media should be put in jail. You shouldn't say that this caravan is some kind of new phenomenon that shows the laxity of our laws. As Allison pointed out earlier, how many last year got asylum? 3 out of a similar number of people who came. So it's not about our laws being terrible. Let me tell you, this is a bad picture on the screen right now for people who think that border security is a non-issue. Right?
They're not jumping over. They're just sitting atop.
It doesn't send the right message of having an impenetrable border. For the political optics, not good. But the president sat there. He got it wrong about the law. He got it wrong about the work situation, what's happening with these under. He used to say they take your jobs. Now he's there in front of this audience talking about how, Nia Malika, it's good they're coming. They're going to come. We're going to do guest worker. Listen to this, because it's a total change in the hate parade that Trump usually has on this.
Nice.
For the farmers, okay, it's going to get good. And we're going to let your guest workers come in, because we're going to have strong borders, but we have to have your workers come in. You know, the unemployment picture is so good, it's so strong, that we have to let people come in. They're going to be guest workers. They're going to come in. They're going to work on your farms. We're going to have the H-2Bs come in. We're going to have a lot of things happening, but then they have to go out. Now,
Nia, this is new. Is it not?
It is. It is new, and it's directed at farmers and farmers who are reacting not so well in the Midwest there to some of those tariffs and what that might mean for their crops and their livelihoods. But what was interesting about that is that crowd was pretty much dead silent when he said that. I mean, that really fell flat. He wasn't selling that well because it's such a change from what he normally says. That's a crowd that is used to him saying, build the wall, keep immigrants out. Immigrants come here. And they wreak all sorts of havoc. So that is what usually stirs up that base of supporters there. So him saying something very differently there, and really, I think, an olive branch to farmers there. And really, let's face it, he does the same thing, right? Bringing in temporary workers for a lot of his properties a lot of the times. So you know, it's sort of a business decision, but it fell flat in that audience.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. That they were confused. There was like some cognitive dissonance of like, wait a minute, I don't know what message this is. And clearly, but the way the president spun it, I thought was so interesting to just watch President Trump do his thing. He was like, this is about to get good, everybody, okay? For the farmers, it's going to get really good. Yeah. You guys are going to love this. I mean, you can hear him pitching this. So obviously someone, Larry Kudlow, somebody on his economic team was like, Mr. President, actually, we need workers right now because of the unemployment level.
Right, and so he was at a rally supposed to offer his greatest hits, and all of a sudden people were like, whoa, guest worker program? You know, that's not what I came here to expect. Look, that's what the president should be advancing. We should be talking about policy. There should be more of an emphasis on governing rather than grandstanding. But that's not what people expect from this president. That actually ends up hurting our civic conversation more than a comedian making an off-color joke.
And look, it also ignores a big part of the reality of immigration that is somehow not helpful to Trump's rhetoric, which is, yeah, the farmers are going to be happy about it. Of course they are. They get flooded with really cheap labor that lives in almost subhuman conditions, and that's really good for their bottom line. And nobody goes after them in any real way for hiring undocumented immigrants. Why? Because they got money and power. As a lobby, that's why. So Trump chooses to demonize the workers who are only coming because of the supply. Right? I mean, that's why they're coming here, Nia Malika. So we heard him do that. We also heard him say, Trump is so tough on Putin that he put that lawyer up to saying that she works for him to try to hurt me here at home. He basically said, now we need to be worried about Russian interference. Now it's real.
Yeah, and in some ways admitting it wasn't real before, right? And that Putin was looking out for him before, when typically the party line is somehow this wasn't happening, that maybe Putin was going after Hillary Clinton, or not going after Hillary Clinton in Clinton's camp. So yeah, this is a new sort of argument from him, this idea that Putin has all of a sudden turned on him, when before, presumably, in this story that he's telling now, they were looking out for each other. So we'll see how long this argument lasts. In some ways, I mean, that whole thing, he's sort of trying out lines. You imagine that this is a president who wants to be helpful to his party, which is facing perhaps a blue wave come November. So there he was trying out some lines to see how they play with that audience that is always, usually at least, so loyal to him. So we'll see how this plays going forward.
So the president tweeting, Nia Malika, he says the people who made the dinner at the White House Correspondents' Dinner should be outraged. No, he didn't. He said the White House Correspondents' Dinner is dead as we know it. This couldn't be less true. This was a total disaster and an embarrassment to our great country and all that it stands for. Fake news is alive and well and beautifully represented on Saturday night. So, look, we know. He took an opportunity. He's very good at this, and he's going on attack. But again, you know, this will be about the people who support him, and they're not going to say, well, Mr. President, you know, you say ugly things all the time when it helps your cause. You did it there in Michigan. So maybe if you want it to be nice, maybe you should be nice. They're not going to say that, but he's playing to advantage because he got an opening.
Yeah, but you know, we expect so little from this president by any standard of past presidencies. We are no longer even aiming for presidential, but which you can judge by, you know, the 44 people who came before him, what's in that ballpark. And that ends up sort of dumbing it all down. That actually hurts the civic conversation. He's going to take a shot at this, sure. Is he going to say somehow it's related to the media and, you know, quote what he calls fake news? Yes, it doesn't. This is a comedian. You might like her humor, you don't like the humor, but we need to be holding the president to the highest standard of all, and we have stopped doing that. That's normalization.
John Avalon, Nia Malika Henderson, great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, big news coming from the Korean Peninsula. Listen to this. The South Korean president says, actually, let's start with North Korea. The North Korean leader, Kim, says that he's going to close his nuclear test site soon. Should the U.S. be skeptical? Of course. We're going to have a Republican congressman weighing in on that next.